Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling, I think, one of the most fundamental questions out there.
Oh, absolutely.
How do we tell the difference between what is alive and what is not?
Right.
A rock versus a rabbit.
Right. And it's deceptively simple because the first things we think of, like movement, a dog running, or a plant growing, those are actually often misleading.
Right. A sleeping dog looks still. A seed can lie dormant for years and look completely inanimate.
Exactly. So the real insight from biology, the thing that biologists agree on, is that the true sign of life is something we can't even see.
The invisible movement of molecules.
The invisible movement of molecules, if that stops, life stops. Period.
And that really opens the door to why we're talking about this.
Yeah.
Because living things, from a tiny bacterium all the way up to us, are these incredibly organized structures.
Highly organized. Tissues, cells, all of it.
And the universe itself, it tends towards chaos, right?
Yeah.
It's disorder.
That's entropy. It's always trying to break that molecular order down. So these life processes we're talking about are essentially a nonstop maintenance job.
A repair crew?
A repair crew, a construction team, a waste disposal unit, all working 24/7 to maintain and repair that fragile structure against decay, even when you're fast asleep.
Okay, so let's unpack that maintenance crew. We're going to explore the 4 essential pillars that make it all work. Getting fuel, which is nutrition.
Converting that fuel into usable power, which is respiration.
Distributing it all, transportation.
And finally, cleaning up the mess, excretion.
All right, let's start at the beginning. You can't do any maintenance without energy and raw materials, so nutrition.
Right. And all that energy has to come from outside the organism. Since life on Earth is, well, fundamentally carbon-based, most of that fuel is also carbon-based.
And this is where we see the first great split in the tree of life.
A huge split. You have the autotrophs on one side, self-feeders.
Producer.
The producers. They take simple inorganic stuff like CO2 and water and use an external energy source, usually sunlight, to build their own complex food.
And that's the famous process, photosynthesis.
Yeah.
It's like this incredible solar-powered factory.
It is. The key steps are just phenomenal. Chlorophyll absorbs sunlight. That energy is used to literally split water molecules, and then carbon dioxide gets built up into carbohydrates, sugar, basically.
It's the planet's ultimate energy conversion machine.
For sure. And what's interesting is how that energy is stored right away. In plants, those carbohydrates are packed away as starch.
Okay.
But in us, when we get energy from food, we store a similar type of molecule, but we call it glycogen. It's stored in our liver and muscles. Same idea, just a slightly different package.
So that brings us to the other side of the split, us, the heterotrophs.
The consumers. Animals, fungi. We depend, directly or indirectly, on those autotrophs. We have to eat complex things.
Which means we need tools to break them down.
Exactly. We need specialized biological catalysts called enzymes to chop up those complex molecules into simple pieces that our cells can actually use.
Strategies for that are pretty wild, too.
Oh, totally. A bread mold, for instance, releases its enzymes outside its body. It digests the food externally and then just absorbs the simple nutrients.
Wow.
And then you've got parasites like a tick or a leech, which just tap directly into a host that's already done all the hard work.
For us, though, the whole process is internal. It happens along this specialized tube, the alimentary canal.
And it starts the second food enters your mouth, not just with teeth crushing it, but with chemistry.
Saliva.
Right. Saliva has an enzyme called salivary amylase, and its job is to immediately start breaking down complex starches into simple sugars.
You can actually taste this, can't you? If you chew a piece of bread for a long time.
You can. It starts to taste sweet. That's the amylase at work. From there, these rhythmic muscle contractions called peristaltic movements push the food down to the stomach.
And the stomach is, well, it's an intense environment.
Very intense. The muscular walls are churning and mixing the food with gastric juices. And those juices have 3 key things. Hydrochloric acid.
The acid.
An enzyme called pepsin, which digests protein, and mucus.
Okay, let's pause on the acid. This is amazing. The body is producing an acid strong enough to damage its own tissues.
It is. And it needs to, because that acidic environment is what activates the pepsin. Pepsin just doesn't work well without it. So you have this paradox.
How do you use a powerful acid without destroying the container?
And that's where the mucus comes in. It's this thin, protective layer that coats the inside of the stomach, shielding it from self-digestion. That feeling of acidity, or in worst cases, an ulcer, that's what happens when that protective mucus layer fails.
It's an incredible balancing act.
Constantly.
From there, the food moves into the small intestine. This is the main hub for absorption.
It is. It's incredibly long, coiled up to fit, and its length actually depends on diet, which is fascinating.
Right. Carnivores, like a tiger, have shorter ones.
Much shorter, because meat is relatively easy to digest. But herbivores, who have to break down tough plant cellulose, need a much, much longer small intestine to give their enzymes enough time to work.
So in the small intestine, it's like the final stage of the assembly line. It gets secretions from two other organs.
Two crucial ones. First, bile from the liver. Bile does two things. It neutralizes the acid from the stomach, making the environment alkaline.
And handles fats.
It emulsifies them. It works like dish soap on grease, breaking big globules of fat into tiny little droplets. This massively increases the surface area for the fat-digesting enzyme lipase to attack.
And the pancreas sends in more enzymes.
Yep. It sends in trypsin for proteins and more lipase for those emulsified fats. By the end of this process, carbohydrates are simple glucose, proteins are amino acids, and fats are fatty acids and glycerol.
All ready to be absorbed.
And to do that, the inner lining of the small intestine is covered in millions of these tiny finger-like projections called villi. Their whole job is just to maximize surface area for absorption into the bloodstream.
Okay, so now we have the fuel. We have glucose in the blood. But a cell can't just burn glucose to make a muscle contract?
No, it can't. It needs to be converted into a usable form of energy. And that process is respiration.
This is all about generating the cell's power currency.
Exactly. And the very first step is, amazingly, almost universal across all of life on Earth. A 6-carbon glucose molecule gets broken down into a 3-carbon molecule called pyruvate.
And this happens in the cytoplasm of the cell.
Always. Right there in the cytoplasm. But what happens next to that pyruvate? That depends entirely on one thing. Is there oxygen available?
And this is where the path splits.
It splits dramatically. If oxygen is present, you go down the aerobic respiration path. This happens inside the mitochondria.
The powerhouses of the cell.
It's the powerhouses. And this is the big payout path. The pyruvate is broken down completely into carbon dioxide and water, and it releases a huge amount of energy.
But if there's no oxygen?
Then you're stuck with anaerobic respiration. It's a quick fix, but very inefficient. In yeast, for example, you get ethanol and CO2. That's fermentation.
And the one we experience is in our own muscles.
Right. When you sprint, your muscle cells use up oxygen faster than your blood can deliver it. They have to switch to an emergency anaerobic mode.
And they turn that pyruvate into lactic acid.
They do. And that buildup of lactic acid is what contributes to that feeling of muscle fatigue and cramps.
Is that a simplification? I feel like I've heard that's more complex.
It is a bit of a simplification, yes, but the source material is right that it's the key byproduct of that specific emergency pathway. It shows how life will sacrifice efficiency for speed when it absolutely has to.
So regardless of the path, all this energy that's released is used for one thing.
It's immediately used to build a molecule called ATP, adenosine triphosphate.
The universal battery pack.
That's the perfect analogy. When a cell needs to do work contract, build something, whatever, it just breaks one of the high-energy phosphate bonds in an ATP molecule. That releases a fixed packet of energy, which then powers the reaction.
To make that big payout aerobic process work, though, we need a steady supply of oxygen.
A huge, steady supply. And the systems for getting it are totally optimized for the environment.
Aquatic versus terrestrial.
A massive difference. A fish has to get oxygen that's dissolved in water, and there's not very much of it. So they have to breathe incredibly fast, constantly pushing water over their gills just to get enough to survive.
Whereas we have it much easier just pulling it out of the air.
We do, but our system is still a masterpiece of optimization. Air comes in the nostrils, gets filtered by hairs and mucus, and goes down the throat, which is held open by rings of cartilage so it can't collapse.
And it all ends up deep in the lungs in these tiny little air sacs.
The alveoli. Millions of them. They look like little bunches of grapes, and this is where the gas exchange happens, across their incredibly thin walls into the blood vessels.
And the scale here is just mind-blowing.
It really is. If you could take all of your alveoli and spread them out flat, their total surface area would be about 80 square meters.
The size of a small apartment, all packed inside your chest.
Exactly. You need that massive area for the exchange to be fast enough. And one last crucial detail. Your lungs always keep a bit of air back, a residual volume.
So they never fully empty.
Never. That ensures that the gas exchange process is continuous. There's always enough time for oxygen to get in and CO2 to get out, even while you're exhaling.
All right, we've got the fuel. We've converted it to ATP. Now we need to deliver that fuel and the oxygen everywhere, the logistics network. transportation.
And we absolutely need one. Because simple diffusion, just letting molecules spread out on their own, is completely inadequate for a large organism.
The source gives a wild figure for this.
It's astounding. It says that if our bodies relied only on diffusion, it would take a single oxygen molecule 3 years to get from your lungs to your toes.
3 years. So that immediately highlights how essential our circulatory system is.
It's everything. And it has 3 main parts: the fluid, which is blood, the network of tubes, the blood vessels, and the pump, the heart.
And the heart is a special kind of pump. It runs on what's called double circulation.
Meaning the blood goes through the heart twice for every 1 full trip around the body. Once on its way to the lungs and once on its way to the rest of the body.
And our heart has 4 chambers to make that possible.
Right. And the 4 chambers are there to do one critically important job: keep the oxygenated blood on the left side completely separate from the deoxygenated blood on the right.
No mixing.
No mixing. That separation is what allows for a super efficient supply of oxygen. And that's essential for high energy animals like us and birds, because we need that efficiency to maintain a constant warm body temperature.
You can even see the power in its structure, can't you?
Oh yeah. The ventricles, which are the chambers that pump blood out of the heart, have much thicker, more muscular walls than the atria, which just receive blood. They need that extra muscle to push the blood so far.
And the network it pushes through is specialized too. Arteries, veins.
Arteries carry blood away from the heart. It's under high pressure, so they need thick, elastic walls to handle the force. Veins bring blood back to the heart. It's under low pressure, so they have tiny valves inside them to make sure the blood doesn't flow backward.
And then what about their repair crew for this system? It's a high-pressure system. Leaks must be a big problem.
A huge problem. If you get a leak, you lose pressure and you lose blood. So circulating in the blood are these tiny cell fragments called platelets. They're the emergency response team. They swarm to any injury site and create a clot to plug the leak.
There's also another fluid, right? Lymph.
Lymph. It's kind of a secondary circulatory system. It's a fluid that's a lot like blood plasma, but without the red cells. It does a couple of key things, like transporting digested fats. But its main job is to collect excess fluid that leaks out of the capillaries and return it to the blood. It's our drainage system.
Now, plants have a totally different set of problems. They're stationary.
Right. Low energy needs, not moving around, so they can get away with a much slower transport system. But they still have 2 of them, and they're both amazing.
Xylem and phloem.
Xylem moves water and minerals up from the roots, and it's driven by 2 forces. At night, there's a slight root pressure that pushes water up a bit.
But the main driver is during the day.
The main driver is incredible. It's called transpiration pull. The evaporation of water from the leaves creates a powerful suction force that literally pulls a continuous column of water up from the roots, sometimes hundreds of feet.
It's a passive, solar-powered pump.
Essentially, yes. Now, the phloem is different. It moves the food, the sugars made during photosynthesis, and it can move them up or down wherever the plant needs them.
And this one isn't passive.
Not at all. This is an active process that requires energy, ATP. The plant uses energy to actively pump huge amounts of sugar into the phloem tubes.
What does that do?
It creates enormous osmotic pressure. Think of it like overinflating a tire. The pressure gets so high inside the phloem that it forces the sugary sap to move towards any area with lower pressure, like growing buds in the spring or the roots for storage in the fall. It's a controlled, high-pressure delivery system.
Okay, so last stop. We've done all this work, eating, breathing, pumping, and all of that activity creates waste products.
Inevitably. And many of them, particularly the nitrogenous wastes from breaking down proteins, are toxic. They have to be removed. That's excretion.
For humans, this whole process is centered on one pair of organs.
The kidneys. Their entire job is to filter those nitrogenous wastes like urea and uric acid out of the blood.
And the tiny filtering unit inside the kidney is the nephron.
The nephron, it's this beautiful little structure, a tiny knot of capillaries where the blood is filtered under pressure. But the most incredible part isn't the filtering.
It's what happens after.
It's what happens after. The initial amount of fluid filtered by the kidneys in a healthy adult is about 180 liters every single day.
180 liters, that's more than 45 gallons.
It is. But obviously you don't excrete 180 liters of urine. You excrete maybe 1 or 2.
That is just unbelievable efficiency.
Has to be. If you didn't reabsorb 99% of that water, you would die of dehydration in hours. That process is called selective reabsorption.
So it's not just a filter, it's a recycling plant.
It's an active, intelligent recycling plant. As that initial filtrate flows through the long tubule of the nephron, the body actively pulls back everything it needs. All the glucose, amino acids, salts, and of course, almost all of the water.
Which is why an artificial kidney, dialysis, is so different.
It's a lifesaver, but it's fundamentally different. A dialysis machine can filter the wastes out, but it has no mechanism for that selective reabsorption. It's just a filter, not a recycler.
And plants, as always, play by different rules.
Totally different. Their waste is different, so their methods are too. Gaseous waste like oxygen is easy. It just leaves through the stomata.
For other things, they basically just store it.
They're masters of storage. They can store waste in cellular vacuoles or convert it into harmless solid forms like gums and resins, which you often see in old xylem wood.
And the most obvious method is just putting it in the leaves.
Yep. They store waste products in their leaves, and then once a year, they just drop the leaves. It's the simplest form of trash disposal you can imagine.
What an incredible journey through the body's internal machinery. It started with this idea that life is just a constant molecular battle against disorder.
A battle to maintain order.
And we've seen the four systems that fight that battle. Nutrition to get the building blocks, respiration to power the work, transportation to connect everything, and excretion to take out the trash.
And all of it, this tireless, constant effort, is happening inside you right now without you ever thinking about it. But when you look at the numbers, the 3 years for diffusion, the 180 liters filtered by the kidneys, you realize it's not just that these processes exist. It's the speed and the efficiency that make complex life possible.
So what does this all mean for you? Well, the difference between a simple bacterium and a complex organism like a human isn't really about having fundamentally different life processes. At the core, they're the same.
The difference is in the complexity and efficiency of the logistics. The ability to generate huge amounts of energy through aerobic respiration and then deliver it rapidly with a high-pressure circulatory system and a molecule like hemoglobin.
If molecular movement is the definition of life, then maybe the ability to move necessary molecules quickly and efficiently across vast distances, from the lung to the toe or from the root to the leaf, is the true engine of biological complexity.
So think about that. What other fundamental differences in efficiency in how organisms absorb nutrients, filter waste, or convert energy are the real deciding factors in who just survives and who ends up dominating the biological world?